I really think about all the times I heard songs for the first time. I remember being on the 403 outside of Brampton when they released Butt Swiggling. It was a funny, and I just remember that. And I remember being in St. John, New Brunswick, first time I heard Little Bones off of Road Apples. And it was a Mustang parked at a red light and it was booming through a tea roof. And the first time I heard Escape is at Hand by the Traveling Man, it's probably the most poignant moment in the movie that was released a long time running, when the first song Gord played after he came through his surgery was Escape is at Hand for the Traveling Man. There always seemed to be irony in everything Gord did. But I heard that for the first time in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So I can actually place, like we do momentous events, Paul Henderson's goal, etc. I remember hearing Hip songs for the first time all over the country.
And that's one thing I think a lot of the reaction we're seeing online, especially in the hockey community, is players saying his music was my whole career. He had a special connection with hockey. Why was that?
Well, he's Harry Sinden's godson, so he has that love of the Boston Bruins, and Harry Sinden and Don Cherry are really close, so it's not enough that I have Don in the Kingston story, but I was really blessed to meet all 5 members of the band, and they were a hockey team. They split the revenues, all the royalties evenly. They really propped up their Gretzky. Gord was their Gretzky, and they were not jealous. They were supportive, and he dealt with the audience. He was the showman. And they were the engine. It was a great hockey team, so great band, but they played it like Harry Sinden would have loved.
And they wrote music about hockey, which was something kind of unique to them, right?
Well, Gord, that's for me, I liken him to our Shakespeare. His vocabulary was incredible, his honesty, his heart was raw. He chose different ways to celebrate Canada, but he always did it as a tutorial. It was almost always a little bit about some of the angst or some of the unfairness. That was his greatest gift, is that he didn't sit back and feel a sense of pride. He felt a sense of gratitude, and he felt a sense of purpose in everything. The way he died obviously came down to 2 couplets. One was thank you, and the other was First Nations. And he made it a point always to have a purpose. And he sat and worked hard every night, by the fire, by the candle. He would write, and he would write. And that's why it's his line. But I love the idea, night takes the chances and day the applause. He really understood how much risk there was in writing, how much it was a challenge, it was work, and he accepted it, and he did it conscientiously, and that's why Under the Bright Lights it worked.
And that was a line that you referenced in your Sportsnet article that you wrote about Gord. You were a big part of his final show, and you said you were nervous. I was actually surprised to read that, but it was a massive moment in front of the country.
Except I didn't view it so much as the massive moment or the 10 million viewers or any of that. What I did view it as is this is Ron's chance to say thank you properly to Gord, who had meant so much to me. I quoted the song The Wherewithal. This is a long answer for television, but The Wherewithal is basically, I always loved that guy. He's not on TV anymore, to get out before he had the wherewithal. And it was about vanity. It was about being sort of locked into the vices, whether it be fame or fortune. You would walk away. And I used that as my sort of personal marching orders. Gord gave me marching orders. Every time I ever met him, he gave me a tip on how to behave. He would teach me, Ron, you're coming back to Hockey Night in Canada in the leading role. You would do well to remember, your job is to elevate Elliot, Kelly, and Nick and make sure that you help them to shine. I think that is really important because they became the team when Sportsnet and Rogers took over. They need you. Imagine, this is Gord Downie. We're supposed to be talking about his tour across Canada and his battle, and all he wanted to do was counsel me on the best way to help others. Really good.
And what was your final marching orders from Gord? What would have been shared in your last conversation together?
We talked a lot about that. We talked about having the, gratitude. Patrick, his brother, and Gord and I were having a beer, and it was amazing. Gord was completely lucid in his naming hockey players, the cast of Hockey Night in Canada. He really struggled to remember his own song lyrics at the end, but he had that down that day. And Patrick, his brother, said to me, Ron, I'm glad you thanked Gord, because that's what Gord's trying to do now. He wants to thank his band by having this tour, to have a little nest egg for each of the other 4 members. He wants to thank his fans. He was very grateful for the fact that people enjoyed him, and little things. He loved that both men and women were attracted. It wasn't just a beer guzzling boys hockey dressing room crowd. It was everybody kind of understanding that his message was about humanity. It was just beautiful. It was communication at the highest level, from the heart, with that one express purpose to say thanks. And so I never forget it. I always look at every scene and say thank you. How's that? Where'd that come from?
It's a tough day.
Yeah. Well, it's not. It's a grateful day, but yeah, he was a good guy.